The Biophilic Leadership Summit is the only multi-day conference entirely dedicated to biophilic projects, principles, and research, bringing together the top industry leaders in an intimate, natural setting to network, build partnerships, and learn from each other.
This year's summit will explore biophilic placemaking and how we can use biophilic principles to promote health, happiness, and vitality in public spaces.
In addition to fascinating presentations, delicious farm-to-table meals at Serenbe, and cocktails, this year's summit will feature a selection of biophilic experiences like forest bathing, bird watching, and more.
So join us in Serenbe for the 6th Annual Biophilic Leadership Summit from March 24th to March 26th, 2024.
Learn more about the summit and register today at biophilic.summit.com.
That's biophilic.summit.com. We hope to see you there.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, Monica.
We had the most amazing conversation last week with Jeff Tkach, the Chief Impact Officer at Rodale Institute.
Yes. So for those who may not know, Rodale Institute is widely recognized as the founder of the modern organic agriculture movement and the certification you see on your veggies. Their mission is to expand organic regenerative practices through research, education, and farmer training. And in his role, Jeff oversees the partnerships and programs that help Rodale achieve those goals.
Rodale is really on the cutting edge of research of organic farming, and Jeff is an absolute wealth of information. We go pretty deep into this episode, talking about everything from Rodale's research into soil health and nutrition to organic and regenerative standards, even into carbon sequestration.
It was so fascinating. So without further ado, let's get to our interview with Jeff Tkach. Well, Jeff, how are you? We're so happy to have you here in Biophilic Solutions.
I am great, Jennifer. It's such an honor to be here today. Thank you so much for having me as your guest.
Oh, we're thrilled. We're thrilled. I'm going to start by saying you might hear a little background noise because I'm back in my New York City apartment and there's some traffic outside. So I just want to put that out there. Monica, how are you today?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day here at Serenbe. And Jeff, you actually just landed from Pennsylvania.
Literally just landed, and I feel like I was transported to another world, into a world that I always look forward to arriving at.
Well, we love having you here, and I know we're going to learn a lot about Rodale and what you're doing here in the Southeast, as well as I've heard we're going to talk about some vegetables today.
I cannot wait to get into the vegetable conversation.
I know. So give us just a tiny little touch about your background and your work at Rodale, what you're doing right now and your role.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been with the Rodale Institute for 4 years. I serve as the Chief Impact Officer of the organization on the core leadership team, and I oversee all the external operations, all the parts of Rodale Institute that touch the outside world and that are measured through our impact. It's a very humbling honor to do that work. And Monica, you and I have known each other in other iterations. My journey to this work was a bit of a circuitous route, I guess you could say, and started working through the publishing industry on and off for about 16 years. And through that work, connected with the work of Rodale Institute in a roundabout way. I had the rare honor of serving on the board of directors of the Rodale Institute for about a year and a half before falling madly in love with the work and begging the board to give me a job. So I've been with them full time, as I mentioned, and for 4 years, and it's been an incredible experience so far.
I love it. Well, and you guys Rodale opened multiple research centers across the country over the past year or so. And one of them is just up the street, the Southeastern Research Center at a beautiful farm called Manyfold. And I know you're here this week to do a lot of outreach and partnerships and discussions. Yeah. Really what we want to talk about, because this is the Biophilic Solutions podcast, is soil today.
Awesome. My favorite topic.
Yeah. I know. And Jennifer and I were just talking before you got on that, Jennifer, what is it? Healthy soil.
Soil health is human health, correct? Is that what you kind of talk about, Jeff?
Yeah, actually, that's our mission. So the mission statement of Rodale Institute was written by our founder 75 years ago. J.I. Rodale said that healthy soil equals healthy food equals healthy people. So that's really been the guiding thesis of our work for over 7 decades. It's pretty profound.
That is profound.
You guys really founded the term organic. right? And
J.I. Rodale, yeah, in the current vernacular, J.I. Rodale was credited for coining the term organic as it's used today. That happened around May of 1942, where he coined the term organic agriculture as a production method for producing food.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And touch on, because I think it's everywhere right now, the term regenerative is something that everybody's talking about. And I know that's something that you guys are also working very hard to sort of put a surround around that as far as agriculture. Can you touch on that for a minute?
Yeah, well, it's rare when there's such a visionary founder as there was in J.I. Rodale. And then to have a next generation in his son, Robert Rodale, who was, in my opinion, even more visionary. So imagine J.I. Rodale coined the term organic as it relates to agriculture in the 1940s. In the 1970s, his son, Robert Rodale, became the leader of the Rodale Institute and was a world traveler. So he spent a lot of time in third world countries. He spent a lot of time in Africa and Asia. And as he would travel around, the word sustainability was coming into vogue at that time. And he hated that word sustainability. And the reason he hated the word sustainability was because, you imagine he was this agricultural leader traveling around to these countries where the agricultural regions had become so desertified because of soil mismanagement and because of ecological destruction that he felt to himself, as I look around and I hear the word sustainability, I think to myself, there's nothing here to sustain. At the soil level of these broken agricultural systems, everything needs to be regenerated. And he became enamored by this idea of regeneration or regenerative agriculture. And the way Bob Rodale saw it was, if we as farmers focus all of our efforts and energies on rebuilding the soil, the health of the soil, then the crops grown in that soil will get healthier. The people consuming those crops, they'll get healthier too. By the way, the farmer who's growing those crops, their bottom line is going to improve. And if their bottom line improves, then guess what? The community is going to flourish economically. And so everything in an agricultural system rooted and grounded in healthy soil, everything in that system regenerates. It's like a ripple out effect. And so Bob Rodale coined the term regenerative agriculture. And today, some 40 years later, Rodale Institute has come forth with the highest bar standard in agriculture called the Regenerative Organic Certification. So Rodale Institute has actually put a standard behind the word regenerative. We're the first to do that. And so it's a very humbling and exciting time for us in our history.
I love that. There's also something I know you talk about a lot in your business is about what is hidden hunger. I know there's a lot of talk about what is hidden hunger and what barriers prevent most Americans from accessing high quality organic food in their everyday lives, would you say?
Yeah, well, as the soil goes, we go. And so what's happened through the destruction and decimation of our agricultural systems over the last 50 to 70 years, primarily through the advent of industrial agriculture, chemical-based agriculture, we have so degraded the health of our soil that the food we are eating today is lacking. So you could be well-fed, but undernourished. That's this idea of hidden hunger, where we are not short on calories in this country, right? There's plenty of food to go around. It's just the kind of food we're eating is so devoid of nutrients because of the decimation and the depletion of our soils that we are walking around with hidden hunger. And so at Rodale Institute, we're working through it. We've just launched a study that Monica alluded to a moment ago. It's actually the first study of its kind in the world called the Vegetable Systems Trial. We call it VST. And this is the first study in the world that seeks to answer the question, is organic food truly more nutrient dense? Is it truly worth it? Why am I spending 30, 40, 50% more to buy organic food when in fact, no one has ever proven whether or not organic food is truly more nutritious? And so that's what we're setting out to do. And I think that this particular study, of any scientific study we've ever done in our history, this one holds the most power. Because if we truly do find that organic food is more nutrient dense, well, that changes everything. That changes everything at the grocery store. So it's very exciting.
And quickly, just to sort of touch real quickly back on the regenerative for our listeners, the difference between organic and regenerative as far as a certification would be?
Well, so right now the USDA in the USDA houses the standard for organic agriculture. Back in 1990, there was some legislation passed called the National Organic Production Act. And by 2002, we began to see that little USDA organic logo roll out on products on shelves across the country in grocery stores and on textiles. And so for over 20 years, we've had an audited standard held under our US government. And so people, often wonder, is organic, can you really trust it? And when in fact, the reality is, yes, organic food, when you purchase it, it's one of the only, if not the only audited standards in our grocery store. So it's a very trustworthy thing, even though it's come under some criticism recently. By and large, it is something you can trust. Now, fast forward to today, many farmers are beginning to co-opt the word regenerative. They're trying to bypass the organic certification. And they're saying, well, I'm a regenerative farmer. Well, the sad reality is that the word regenerative in that sense has not actually been, there's no standard behind it until now. Until Rodale we've actually said it's not enough just to be regenerative. It's not enough to be organic. We're setting the highest bar standard where a farmer should be both regenerative and organic. And so what's happening is a lot of large scale farmers are beginning to embrace regenerative practices, which we applaud. We think it's a great thing. Farmers are moving in the right direction by embracing regenerative agriculture. But in terms of an actual audited standard, it's not there yet.
When will we see that in like our grocery stores?
Well, Rodale Institute officially launched the regenerative organic certification in partnership with Dr. Bronner's in Patagonia and several other brands. That standard is housed under the Regenerative Organic Alliance, and that product is on shelves. So today you can go to the grocery store and find regenerative organic Dr. Bronner's coconut oil. You can find regenerative organic rice products. So there is a slew of products, and you can learn more at regenorganic.org for a whole list of items there.
And should we be demanding that of, I don't want to say demanding, should we be requesting that from our grocery stores or asking our farmers? Because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, the regenerative takes into account the people. So people who are working on the farm and like, how are they being treated? The animals, if it's how the animals are being treated on the farm, and then the soil health, where the organic maybe didn't take into those considerations.
Well
is that
done,
true?
Monica.
See, you taught me.
You nailed it, actually.
Okay, well, you taught me all that. Okay, good. I got it right.
You did. So there's three pillars. So yes, under the organic certification, the current USDA standard does not account for soil health. How is a farmer treating the health of the soil? Okay, great. The farmer is not using synthetic pesticides or herbicides, which we know are known carcinogens. They're destructive to the environment. That's great. We applaud any farmer that is certified organic. But to be a regenerative organic farmer, we're asking the farmer, how are you treating the soil? How are the animals in your farming system being treated? Are they being treated in a humane way? Are they given 24/7 access to pasture and to the outdoors? Are they being handled properly? And then thirdly, what about the human beings working in these farming systems? How are they being treated? Are they being paid a fair wage? Are they being given access to healthcare? Are they working normal hours, or are they being taken advantage of? So the regenerative organic certification asks those three questions above and beyond the organic standard. And yes, consumers should be demanding this product in the marketplace. And as they do, the brands will have to respond.
I want to go back to what Jennifer asked you about sort of the hidden hunger and sort of the concept of, if the soil is healthy and has nutrients in it, that translates into the vegetables, which obviously we eat, or the food, and then our body is taking in more nutrients. I want to get like a little wonky, like tell me a little more details about the vegetable system trial. Like how are you doing that research?
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting study for a myriad of reasons. So what it is, it's a side-by-side comparison of organically grown vegetables and conventionally grown vegetables. So we've essentially taken a several acre plot at Rodale Institute. Okay. The study is about 4 years old. So about 4 years ago, we designed this study. We have an advisory board, and we are trying to mimic conventional vegetable operations. So the way that farmers are growing conventionally grown vegetables using synthetic pesticides and herbicides at scale, we've shrunken down into replicates, and we've got plots that are basically mimicking these large scale systems on a smaller plots that are more research driven. Mm-hmm. And then directly next to those plots, we've got organic plots. So plots of land that are growing the same exact vegetable, but using Rodale Institute's organic best practices. So using cover crops, heavy crop and complex crop rotations, using integrated pest management to deal with pest pressure, using organic methods. What's super interesting about this study is it's the first land so we've been on this farm, our main campus in Pennsylvania. We're on 333 acres, and we've been on that land for over 40 years. So we've been managing that soil using regenerative organic methods for 4 decades. And this particular study is the first area of the farm that we're actually going to be degrading a portion of the soil. Wow. So think about that. So after 40 years of not spraying synthetic pesticides and herbicides, now all of a sudden we're going to start spraying. We have started spraying these harmful chemicals in a very controlled way. Now, these are scientists that the way that they apply these chemicals is done in a very, not only a controlled way, but a very research-based way. So there's no drift, and they're very careful to make sure it doesn't mix with
that
the
was
other
going to be my
plots.
question. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we've watched in just a couple of years, we've actually watched how soil degrades. And last year, you have to keep in mind, this research is very expensive. So just to do the analysis of these 5 different vegetables. So we grow a root crop, a fruit crop, and a leaf crop. There's 5 different types of vegetables grown in the vegetable assistance trial. We send those samples off to very sophisticated laboratories that have very expensive diagnostic equipment. And last year we sent off samples of purple potatoes. So these were a purple potato variety. Some were grown synthetically or conventionally using chemicals, and some were grown organically. And I happen to know the co-owner of the laboratory called HRI Labs in the Midwest, where we sent these samples. And Larry called me a few weeks, months before the data was published. I don't even know if the data has been published yet, peer reviewed.
Okay.
However, he anecdotally shared with me, he was astonished to call me and tell me that what they found preliminarily was 26 phytonutrients, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, amino acids in the organic potatoes that existed at levels of 100 to 700 times higher than the conventional.
Wow.
After 4 years, the purple potatoes grown organically had between 100 and 700 times higher the amounts of
nutrients,
very, very tiny nutrients. These nutrients that we know safeguard us from cancers and from autism and autoimmune conditions.
Oh, wow.
So think about that. That's only after a couple of years. Where are we going to be 20 years, 30 years? What are we going to learn in this study? Can you imagine?
Well, and you hear that nutrient density has declined over the past 70-ish years. But I'm not, I don't know where, I don't have the citing of that. I'm sure you guys do on your website, but this is showing that it's declining over just 4 years of doing conventional versus organic.
Just 4 years. Exactly.
And I mean, in 700 is a huge number. I mean, but I would not want my vegetables to be 100 times less effective, if you will. I mean, you're
getting no nutrients in your food. I mean, you think about like all the things you're eating, you're trying to eat well, and the potatoes and the kale or the carrots or whatever it might be. And you think you're doing well, you think you're doing good, and you're not getting the nutrients to really survive and thrive in our bodies. And that's scary. You think about the autoimmune issues and also autism, like that's the scary plate that we're in.
Yes.
Well, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion around, the autoimmune and the autism with the synthetic pesticides too. It's not just that potentially the vitamins and the amino acids are at a lower level, but it's what's being sprayed on the crops. Is that correct as well? Like that, we have a concern about that.
In some ways, it's a much even greater concern. Is the deleterious effects of these harmful, known carcinogenic synthetic pesticides and herbicides that are ubiquitous in our food and farming systems. Actually, I thought of a story just now as you were talking about that, Monica. we work a lot with our state government here in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of the leading producers of organic food in the nation. We're in the top 3 behind California. And so about 6 months ago, I was sitting in the state capitol building in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, with one of the top government legislators in the state. And we were sitting with him and his staff, trying to demonstrate to him the power of the work that Rodale is doing right in our own state to help farmers transition their farms to organic production. We're currently working, our consultancy launched 2 years ago with a little bit of state funding. We got some money from our state because we have a very progressive governor who's beginning to see the future, which the future is organic. And he's been investing in Rodale a little bit, and so much so that we were able to launch a consultancy. And now we are offering free consulting to any farmer in our state that desires to go organic. And we had 0 clients when we launched the consultancy on day 1, less than 24 months ago. And today we have over 140 farms in the state that have said, I want to transition to organic. And just to give you some perspective, we're here in Georgia. I believe the total amount of organic farms in the state of Georgia is about 140. So in 2 years, we've got 140 new farms. And Pennsylvania is on its way to having 1,500 certified organic farms. So I'm sitting in his office, this hallowed, marbled, incredible office in our gorgeous state capitol building. And we were talking about the work of Rodale Institute. He stops me mid-sentence and he said, I don't believe very much in that organic stuff. He goes, in the county I come from, which is a very agrarian county, he said, a carrot is a carrot, potatoes are potatoes, milk is milk. And the room just went dead silent. And he surveys the room. Now, knowing that Rodale sits on 40 years of science that would prove otherwise, he kind of like turns to his staff and he looks at their eyes. And I all I could say was, do you really believe that? He's like, no, that was the stupidest thing I ever said.
Wow.
And so we are, living at a moment where that is very exciting to me, because we are waking up to the fact that, number one, we as humans, as a species, have never lived in a time such as this where we're so disconnected from farming that most people do believe that a carrot is a carrot, milk is milk, potatoes are potatoes. But now that Rodale is really looking under the hood into the soil, and we begin to find answers to that question, I think that we're going to wake up to a whole new consciousness around where my food comes from and how that food was produced.
Do you think COVID also had a piece of that, because of that time that we've had to reflect and we're actually spending more time in touch with nature this past year? Maybe it's helping our eyes to be opened of what food actually looks like or should look like.
Jennifer, I've never been more convicted that the last 24 months has accelerated transformational and positive change unlike any other moment in recent history. And during the pandemic, I remember it vividly. I remember the feeling of us all going into quarantine. It was in early spring. And it was almost like, to the day, this sort of collective conscience in the United States was, let's start a garden. Let's find a farmer in our community. And would you believe that direct farm sales during the quarantine? So in other words, last spring, farmers, all of a sudden, their whole market was disrupted. Small scale organic farmers that normally would sell into high-end restaurants, overnight, they lost all their business. But almost to a day, you go to any small scale organic producer in this country, and consumers were literally driving up to the farm gate saying, how can I buy your produce from you? And direct farm sales skyrocketed 420% year over year. Wow. The National Gardening Association reported that 22 million new gardens were planted in America last year. 22 million. So now all of a sudden, what did we do? We have a global pandemic, which is okay. What it did expose is we've got a very unhealthy population. With a lot of premorbidities and very weak immune systems. The second thing it did was it exposed, wow, we all of a sudden have a global supply chain that is frail and broken. Grocery store shelves went bare. And then consumers started asking, well, I better get healthy. I better stay healthy. The number one thing I can do is take control of my food. And so people took to their backyards. If they didn't do that, then they met a farmer in their community. And so I believe that this has completely upended America's relationship with food for the better. Yes.
I think that's great. thinking about like the peril of like healthcare systems in that kind of way, right? Of like, where's our food coming from? We better start looking right now because we're an unwell country, really.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting to think about, why people choose organic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we sort of probably coincided a little bit with the uptick of just, the availability and the certification, because our kids were born in 2005, 2007, right? So that's maybe sort of the early days, if you will, Jeff. And so we became more aware, not only for ourselves, but like we had these little bodies, right, that we were putting food into.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that becomes an interesting thing. I know that Wholesome Wave has done an amazing job with, because obviously the it can be higher. And so creating equity and access at farmers markets by, doubling SNAP dollars, which is super cool at farmers markets. And I think, the times that we go to somewhere amazing and have a real strawberry, like the flavor, or tomato in season, like the flavor profile is so amazing, right? But also, I know on the website, it really talks about how all of your decade-long research, beyond this current vegetable trial is like competitive yields, and higher resiliency during drought. Tell us a little bit about that, talking about soil again. And, people don't realize that with climate change, organic has a huge benefit that we need to expand that. So can you talk a little bit about that and the goals with Rodale around the benefits of having organic agriculture versus conventional?
Sure. Yeah. And, you'll often hear sort of the storyline or the through line around organic agriculture in the mainstream is that organic certainly can't feed the world. It's a nice idea, but it can't be done at scale. It's more expensive. Well, Rodale's, and not just Rodale's, but many other highly respected universities and the USDA have all done similar studies that would prove the contrary. So at Rodale, we actually sit on the longest running side-by-side comparison of organic and conventional grain crops in the world. It's a study called the Farming Systems Trial, and it's run for 40 years. And in that 40 years, we've proven through research and hard science that organic agriculture actually performs about the same with conventional in terms of yields. So sadly, but the reality is that most farmers are graded on one thing. So conventional farmers are graded on how much stuff can I produce, yields. Well, when you look at organic systems and compare them to conventional, guess what? Conventional farming does outpace organic in terms of yields in the first few years. So our farming systems trial, the first 5 years, conventional was definitely winning the day. But over 40 years, as soil health improves, which doesn't happen overnight, organic and conventional are about equal in terms of yields, except for, guess what, when there's a drought, which as we're moving more into an unstable era of climate, we're having more years of drought, or if it's not drought, then it's extreme rain or these extreme weather events. Organic systems are way more resilient. They out-yield organic up to 40% in those years, while using 45% less energy, climate, while sequestering way more carbon, while producing more nutrient-dense food. And then the best part is we are helping a farmer earn between 3 and 6 times more profit. So when people ask me the question, Jeff, could organic agriculture feed the world? My answer is, how could it not? How could it not? And that's where, so organic agriculture is really the farming of the future. It's farming for a better planet. It's farming for healthier soil, cleaner water, cleaner air, less carbon in the atmosphere. And it's our path forward. And I've never been more thrilled. Our work has accelerated unlike any other time in our history, just in the last few years. And in recent months, we've been on several phone calls with some of the leading representatives and senators in the United States who are doubling down on a pathway around regenerative organic agriculture. So I think the time is now for this movement.
And how would I, like just a regular person, support a local farmer? What would be like my chain of action to say, do I like go to my local farmer's market and say, what are you using? Or how do you cultivate your land? Like, what are the actions that I can take locally?
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is for everybody, Jennifer. Everyone participates. And that's the beauty of it. As we as consumers get more involved in this notion of agriculture, as we get more curious and we join in the dance and we begin to participate in this act of farming, we can actually demand the kind of planet we all want to live on. So it is a law of supply and demand. Today, total U.S. organic market share is like something like 6%. So 6% of all food at the grocery store is certified organic. There's economic theorists out there that predicted that when the market gets to 15%, that's the tipping point. And how are we going to get there? Well, the market grew by 14.5% last year. So organic food sales were up 14.5% year over year. So we're creeping towards that 15% total share. And the way we do that is, number one, I think of it in terms of concentric circles. So you're living in New York City. The first question you should ask yourself is, what could I grow on my windowsill? What could I grow on my fire escape? Like just growing something, a basil plant, it does something to you. It connects you to biophilia. It connects you to nature. If I understand it, the word biophilia is a desire to commune with nature. Well, when you stick that basil seed in some healthy soil on your windowsill and you watch that miracle unfold over several weeks, and then you snip a few leaves off and you put it on, you garnish a pasta dish with that, it does something to your heart. So that's sort of like concentric circle one. Next step out is, well, I travel a lot and that basil plant might die. Well, great. There's probably a green market on 14th Street that you can go to on Saturday or Sunday, and you get to know a farmer. You get to know just one person and you build a relationship with them. You ask them about their farm, ask them about their soil health practices, ask them about, are they a regenerative farmer? Are they a regenerative organic farmer? You will never find a group more proud to talk about their craft than a farmer. And so I love to build relationships with farmers. And then the next concentric circle out from there is, what's the local co-op that I can join? How can I keep my food dollars in the greater New York metro area? I want to make sure that the farmers surrounding New York City are getting my food dollars. And then when we do that, we build more resilient food communities. Then we don't have to become so reliant on international supply chains, and we get to reward farmers in our backyard. In World War II, during the World War II era, some 45% of all the produce consumed in this country came from our own backyards.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, almost
Victory Gardens, right?
That's amazing.
Victory Garden.
Yeah, Victory Gardens.
So half of the produce in this country was grown in our own backyards. Pre-pandemic, 17% of all the food purchased at the grocery store was imported from other countries.
Whoa.
Wow.
So if you think about it, we've been on like a 70-year march away from source. And now it's the simple things of growing something on your windowsill, having a relationship with a farmer that you visit every Saturday morning on 14th Street.
Yep.
It's the sort of ricochet effect of that changes the world. It changes the way it changes our global supply chains. It localizes our food systems. It creates better, more resilient food economies. It connects us with nature. We don't have to turn all of our farmland into neighborhoods, because the more we devalue farming, the further we get away from nature. And that's the path we've been on. But we can reverse that by turning inward to that first concentric circle.
Well, and I love what you're saying. It's very much this sort of unifying power of food, right? And all of us have to eat, right? So in a sense, I mean, you do hear this, like, we can vote 3 times a day or more, possibly, on what we want to do and what we decide to put in our bodies, right? And so I always believe that it's like, by sharing the information is the first step, right? Because you can't unlearn what we've talked about today.
Exactly.
Once you see, you can't unsee.
Yes. 100%. And I think, that sort of rural and urban communities, linking them together, right? You've talked about this a lot, Jeff, right? So we're reliant on each other, and really understanding the benefits of both. So much of the country, we think of this as a divide, but it's really a way to connect.
Yes. Yes, we meet our brother and our sister at the table. I don't care what our differences are. One thing that binds every one of us is food. To your point, 3 times a day, we consume food. And what was interesting, and I certainly don't want to go down a political rabbit hole here, but you think about the divide we all just lived through during the sort of political show that we all just observed. And I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm from a rural part of Pennsylvania where Rodale is based, and I relate to both rural and urban environments. And so you go into these rural communities, and they have felt forgotten. They have felt abandoned, and they have felt devalued. And then through my work at Rodale Institute, we've recently formed a pretty significant partnership with the largest commodity producer in the world, Cargill, which is a bit controversial. That why is Rodale working with Cargill? Well, because they're the biggest processor of grain in the world, and they have a desire to go organic because that's where the market's going. Well, guess what? The number one barrier, why do farmers not go organic? It's because they don't have commitments from producers to give them long-term contracts. They need food producers committing to them. They need technical assistance, and that's what Rodale's doing. So Cargill and Rodale have teamed up, and we're going to and through a food company called Bell & Evans, we're going to transition hundreds of thousands of acres over the next 3 to 5 years, primarily in the Midwest and the Northeast. Farmers of 150 grain farmers that have 150 or more acres can qualify to become a Rodale Cargill partner, and they will get free consulting from Rodale through the Cargill program. We'll hold their hand and help them be successful in their transition. And then because of Bell & Evans and their buying power, Cargill is going to be able to offer a 5-year contract to these farmers at a very healthy rate.
Fantastic.
Now a farmer's like, wait a minute, I get Rodale, the global leader in organic, teaching me how to do it. And Cargill, the biggest commodity trader in the world, is going to commit to me. Why wouldn't I go organic? And so all of a sudden, the 32-year-old tech entrepreneur that walks into a Whole Foods in downtown San Francisco that wants to see organic chicken on the shelf is reliant upon his brother in the Midwest who's living in rural America, who almost lost the family farm. But because of that 32-year-old tech entrepreneur demanding chicken, organic chicken,
right,
everyone wins.
Sure.
Right.
They both thrive. They both get healthier. The water gets cleaner. The air gets cleaner. We sequester more carbon. The farmer gets to save the family farm. And guess what? Farming's fun again because I'm making money now. Sure. And there's an economic ricochet. So if we could all come together around a table and realize we can put our differences aside and realize that we need each other to eat and to live on a healthy earth, that's the world I want to live in.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And it just to touch on like climate again, because I am sort of fascinated by the concept of drawing down carbon, right, in the soil, and or not releasing it in the first place, right? Is there data on something like that where if you are converting, hundreds of thousands of acres from conventional to organic, the soil health will be better? Are there numbers to share, or is anybody studying like how much carbon benefit that is? Sure.
We should put a link in the notes, but Rodale Institute came out with a white paper last year called Regenerative Agriculture, a down-to-earth solution. It's a white paper that it's a culmination of years of decades of science at Rodale that has proven that if we were to transition all of U.S. farmland, so just farmland in the United States, and again, this is a position paper. It's not like this is going to happen overnight. But if in theory, not in theory, but through science, we've proven that if America was to take all of its farmland currently, transition it to organic production, we would be able to sequester all of the world's carbon emissions in U.S. soils.
What?
Wow.
Yeah. So that doesn't take into account solar, wind,
sure,
all the other climate measures, all the ways that we're improving our buildings and our infrastructure. That takes, if we were to do nothing else, if we were just to change the way we farm in this country, we would be able to sequester all. I mean, that's where our carbon belongs in the soil.
Yeah. No, it's exactly where it belongs. That is wild. Mm-hmm. Okay. We'll definitely pull that paper. Yeah. And then the one of the last things I want to ask is, I've been hearing, sort of percolating, and I just haven't dug into it too much, that some, and I don't know who's paying them, but I've heard that there's this conversation about we could pay farmers to sequester carbon, when ththey're farming. And maybe I'm doing a kind of a loose translation of that, but what's going on there? That sounds like a brilliant idea. If I'm an organic farmer, I'm thinking, well, that's a great way for me to make a few extra dollars, right? Or am I simplifying it too much?
You're not. And there's a lot of people that would agree with you. I think at Rodale Institute, we're a little concerned with that model. And the reason is, Monica, is because Rodale is focused on practices, not outcomes. We have to find a way to reward farmers for producing food. Mm-hmm. That's where carbon should just be icing on the cake. But the whole purpose behind the regenerative organic certification is that it's a practice-based standard. If your whole goal was to farm carbon, well, guess what? I live in Pennsylvania. About an hour north of me is the coal regions. We actually mine a lot of coal. Right. In theory, a farmer, and there's always a farmer, there's always a person, I don't care what business you're in, that finds a way to cheat the system. So if the only intention of a farmer was to sequester carbon, I can go find a lot of coal dust and put it on my land. And by the way, I'm sequestering carbon in theory. I could cheat the test.
Sure. So it's not that I, as a farmer, like Serenbe Farms behind us is, doing organic and, potentially towards regenerative farming, and they will get, kind of a credit because they can prove through their practices they've sequestered carbon. This thing that I'm hearing over here is more people are starting to your point, I think that's a really good differentiator. Like, if you just create this outcome, I don't care how you do it, you'll get paid. It's not the other way. Through your practices, one of the benefits is you'll also get a bonus because the good work that you're doing sequesters carbon.
Yes, that's exactly right. So we've been getting interviewed a lot by federal legislators and their policy teams, basically saying, "Hey, Rodale, what do you think we should be asking farmers in this country to do?" And the answer I'm about to give you, it sounds so simple, but if we were to get farmers to do this, it would have massive impact on globally. So what we're suggesting is that farmers get paid to plant cover crops. So this is like biophilia at its core, right? Mm-hmm. So if you drive around most of the U.S. farmland, if you drive around the Midwest or the Northeast, or even here in the South throughout the winter months, you're going to see a lot of brown, right? Can anyone relate to like seeing brown fields? That should never be. If you come to Rodale in January in Pennsylvania in 30-degree weather, you're going to see green farm fields. Why is that? It's because we plant cover crops. Cover crops are often nitrogen fixing, biodiversity enhancing plants that get planted after a farmer harvests their cash crop, corn, soybeans, oats, wheat, hemp, whatever it is. We then go immediately in that fall and we plant a cover crop. And then that cover crop gets established very quickly it grows. And what it does is it holds the soil in place. It enhances biodiversity. It attracts wildlife. It builds above ground biophilia and below ground biophilia. It sequesters carbon. All those winter months, if that farm field is bare, there's no photosynthesis happening. So December, January, February, March, there's no photosynthetic process happening on that land. So think about the millions and millions of acres that for 6 months sit barren when they could be pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and storing it in the soil. So if we paid farmers to plant something green on their fields all year round, that's when you can scale carbon, Monica.
Wow. That's a transformative idea. I love that. I'm glad that you clarified for me because, again, I keep hearing this little story over here, but that's super helpful for me to be able to better speak to it. And I really love the practice versus outcome.
Me too.
One last question, and two last questions. One, is there anything, I mean, there's a million things I know we could talk about, but is there anything like that we haven't covered that you just want to like touch on or throw out? And then my real final question is like, how can we get involved? Like, how can our listeners get involved? Like, what is Rodale doing? Like, should we sign up for your newsletter? Like, what's a good action we can take?
Sure. I'll start with the first question. One thing that I want to talk about before we end is part of the biophilic movement is about human health, right? And at the heart of who Rodale Institute is, we are a human health organization. We just use agriculture as the tool to get there and soil health. But we see ourselves as a human health organization. And I want to just quickly mention what I'm so excited about when I think about our future is that we've begun to coalesce a conversation with the medical industry. We are beginning to work with medical doctors, and we hope to launch a first of its kind program in the United States in 2022. And we're going to be calling them regenerative health immersions. And we're literally going to be inviting doctors to come for 1 week and get their hands in the soil and learn agriculture, learn soil health. We are going to build a medical-based conference, and it's going to be held on a farm. And
we're going to.
That's brilliant. It's brilliant.
That's amazing because they say that medical professionals have like 1 hour of nutrition, and that's it. Right. They never learn anything more, which blows my mind. Yeah,
but we've seen such a demand in recent years and months from the medical community. I've had the honor of speaking at some medical conferences, and when you begin to educate them on agriculture, they're like, we're not looking far enough upstream. We need to understand farming, and doctors and farmers need to be at the same table. So super stoked about that idea. And if anyone listening is interested in helping to support that effort, we're in the process of raising some final funding to be able to launch our first conference.
Fantastic.
So Monica, to answer your question in closing, how can people get involved? We are at Rodale Institute. I'd encourage everyone listening to opt into our social. Sign up for our newsletters, support our work philanthropically. We are a nonprofit. So, you'd be amazed at what $10 a month can do to advance our mission. If you're here in the Southeast and you're listening, come visit our Southeast Organic Center, just about 1.5 miles from Serenbe over at Manyfold Farm. Our team there will be thrilled to host you. And please join the movement and go back to, as I shared with Jennifer, we all participate. So think about what concentric circle you want to begin with. But I encourage you to get on the journey. So thank you so much for having me today.
I love this view, like the healthy soil, healthy food, healthy people. It's so simple when you think about it, but you explaining it to us the way you did today really helps me look at my food differently. And I thought I was like good about, what I eat, but really you're hitting it home about the farmer and how we can all be a part of making the planet much healthier. So thank you for your time today, Jeff. We really appreciate it.
The joy, Jeff. I get to see you a little bit later this week. So
I'm kind of jealous, by the way. I'm kind of jealous I'm not there at Serenbe with all of you.
I know, Jennifer. I know. I got a house for you.
You too.
And Monica, excited to hang with you in a few days. And Jennifer, we're 90 minutes from Midtown Manhattan. So you can come out anytime you want.
I would love to. Okay, let's split on it. Fantastic. Thanks, Jeff.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Take
care.
Jennifer, that was so great. I feel like I'm pretty familiar with this topic, but I still learned a ton. There are multiple things that really blew my mind.
Same. Like if all the farms in the U.S. went organic, we could sequester all the world's carbon. I mean, what?
I know, it was really insane. And then his whole conversation about cover crops, and that's something I wasn't really aware of either.
It's just one way to protect soil health, and that leads to healthier, more nutrient-dense foods. I had never heard of this before, but it makes so much sense. When you think about it, healthy soil equals healthy food equals healthy people.
I know. And when you look at organic, regenerative farming over time, there's a real competitive advantage versus conventional methods. And it's much better for the planet and for us.
I know. So the other thing I loved were the concentric circles that Jeff talked about and how just planting a basil plant on your apartment balcony, joining a local co-op, these things can have a huge impact on connecting to the food you eat.
Right. So those small steps that we can all take do have a big impact when they're all put together and replicated by lots of people. We can't dismiss those small acts and how they shift our habits and mindset.
So how to get involved? One of those things Jeff mentioned was following Rodale across her social channels, and all of those links are in our show notes.
And if you're able to support Rodale with your dollars, that also goes a long way. And look out for the Regenerative Organic certification. We have another link in our show notes that will help you find some brands you can feel great about supporting.
Exactly. Be an informed consumer.
That's right, because once you know,
you know.
That's right. All right, until next time, Jennifer.
All right, Monica. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.